Welcome back to the Layman's Law School, where two hillbilly lawyers sit around and talk about the issues of the day, the law, and hopefully try to educate some of the laymen out there in the process. I'm here joined by the great and powerful Reid Sanders once again. Hello, Reid.
I appreciate that, Chace. You know, I've been working on my call.
Yeah.
What people should call me, great and powerful. I like it. I like it. I'll give it a week. We'll see how it goes.
I'm stealing it from Joe Rogan, but still. Today last time we did Trump. This time we're fair and balanced here.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about some of the legal issues around the 25th Amendment, what it is, and how it might be relevant to Joe Biden. Okay. Reid, have you looked into the 25th Amendment?
I have, but before we get into this heavy stuff,
I
think you've brought us something.
Oh,
Chace.
that's right. That's right. Libations
for our Friday.
That's right. So I stayed in Georgia. Okay, and
Nice.
I've got one for you, one for me, but these are two different. I'm going to just explain what they are. This right here is a 420. This is an Atlanta-based beer company.
Okay.
It's absolutely fantastic. It's an extra pale ale. For those of you who don't know, pale ale.
Obviously.
IPA.
Obviously, I'm a world traveler.
Well, Indian pale ale, that whole IPA craze that you hear about, that comes from people going from England around the Horn of Africa to India to do trade, and they needed beer to last longer from England to India, and so what did they do? They put more preservatives in it in the form of hops, and so that's why
it's hoppy.
That's right, and it's India Pale Ale because it's going to India. So that's why you got that. I'm having a German Berliner Weiss with blueberries, and I just think it means that I'm a little metro.
I like it.
Right. If I retire in another country, it's got to be France.
Okay. Whatever.
All right.
Without further ado,
there you go.
This is going to be great.
Mm-hmm. Enjoy.
Tastes like grass.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yep. That's not that great. It's fun.
It's not that great.
Woo. Never had that one before. All right. So 25th Amendment.
25th Amendment. Here we go.
What is it?
Well, in short, the 25th Amendment can remove essentially the president from office.
Right.
And the easiest way to, I guess, say what is necessary is kind of like pornography.
Okay.
Right? And I know that's a big jump.
Yep.
But the law for a while in pornography is you know it when you see it.
Right.
And essentially the 25th Amendment says the same thing. The president can be removed from office if you know it. You know it when you see it. And it is actually read unable and inability undefined, since causes of inability could take various forms, not neatly fitting into a rigid definition.
Right.
And essentially what that means is we don't have a definition for you. If you see somebody acting crazy or incompetent, then you can challenge it and challenge him to be out of office. Now, to do that, the first thing you have to do is the vice president.
Sure.
The vice president has to make that motion, that action, that movement. Then you have to have cabinet, the majority of the 15 cabinets to vote the same way.
Right.
And there's a lot of them, and D'Angelo will put them up, but it's the Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, Secretary of Interior, and it goes on and on and on. There's 15 of them. I won't bore you to death.
Right.
But essentially, you have to have the majority of all these things to remove the president from office.
Sure.
Now, the president can remove himself or herself from office. Sure. There's been cases in our history where you have heart problems or disabilities or whatever, where there's been talks about it or kind of movements on it. But as far as my knowledge, I don't think anybody's ever been forcibly removed.
Right.
Is that accurate?
That's
your
accurate.
Knowledge?
That's accurate.
And so what we're kind of talking about today is, I think everybody has seen over the years, especially the last couple, is Biden able to hold office? And he's given some interviews and some other areas that you go, is this guy all there?
Yeah.
Is this guy all there? And it's really not the decisions as so much as just normal conversations.
Right.
And I think you have some clips for us. Do you not?
I do have some clips for you, but before we cue all those up, we have to just remember Joe Biden's a great guy. He's done some good things. Yeah, he's served the country for quite some time. But, when we're talking about making some of the most important decisions that affect all of us,
right?
And in a crisis and quickly, you want somebody that's going to be sharp. And so what I've got here is some comparisons to.
Well, and I'll add on to that real quick, Chace. I've said this for as long as I've been alive. The hatred, and I say it every episode that we do. The division on the sides, I think, is unwarranted, unjust. Most of these people, now don't get me wrong, there are some bad people in politics, but most of the people in politics are trying to do what they believe is right. Now, you may disagree with how they do it and even the end result, but they're not trying to do it to harm people. They think what they're doing is correct. And it's the same thing with Trump and Biden and Obama and everybody through the history. You can say, I hate this guy or I hate this woman, but in the heart of hearts, they're still trying to make America the best.
So
without
being further ado, I have a clip here of this is Joe Biden. I think it's back in the 70s, and he's actually debating campaign finance reform. And what I want you to do is just sort of watch his overall demeanor, the speed with which he speaks, the speed with which he thinks, and we'll compare that later on with some other video.
Okay.
That we politicians, as the young kids say, rip off the American public. I think the American public, in a way, rips off we politicians by forcing us to run the way they do. To raise $300,000 is no mean feat. And unless you happen to be some sort of anomaly, like myself, being a 29-year-old candidate and can attract some attention beyond your own state, it's very difficult to raise that money from a large group of people.
So the next one is him actually debating someone and basically giving an impassioned speech about what he views as being the sort of ills of the apartheid state that was in South Africa. Right.
What disturbs me more than the policy that you call a policy is the rationale for the policy. The rationale for the policy. You set out 4 principles that you adhere to, and then and I will go over them in a moment. Then you say on page 14, we must not become part of South Africa's problem. We must remain part of their solution. We must not aim to impose ourselves, our solutions, our favorites in South Africa. Damn it, we have favorites in South Africa. The favorites in South Africa are the people who are being repressed by that ugly white regime. We have favorites. Our loyalty is not to South Africa, it's to South Africans.
So you can see him, first of all, he's reacting to these questions. You don't hear any ums, you don't hear any stutters, you don't hear he's recently mentioned that he's overcome stammering, in his past. I'm sorry, but that
was an impassioned speech that, not being there in the time and all that, just watching the clip, that's a man who has full abilities of his mind and
top
his body.
Of his game.
He's on top of his game. He's thinking on his feet. He's impassioned, and it's you can just feel it. You can hear it. You can see it. And that's not the president that I've seen.
That's right.
And that's what is leading everyone, I think, to
question some of this stuff.
What's going on?
Yeah, I think we have some clips, and we'll compare that, what we just saw, a command of the issues, a command of his ability to speak and speak his ideas, no stammering, no stuttering, no issues cognitively. And, we have to remember, like this Joe Biden, you wouldn't hear any of these things about.
Correct.
You wouldn't hear any rumblings. This is him on just doing a normal speech.
Right.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
stuff like that.
Is a problem. I'd like to say this. This is not picking on somebody that is up there in age. This, if you are the president of the United States, you have to accept that you're going to have criticism. And this is a problem. Now, the man that we saw before, he wouldn't say the Layman Law School I can define in one word.
That would not happen.
That's a problem.
That's
a problem.
But other things have caused people to be concerned too, and it's almost just like where he actually walks or goes, and like when he's going on stage. And we have another clip of that.
America. God bless you all.
Yeah, and so you're seeing some. He obviously had been coached about who was going to be up there with him. There's probably supposed to be somebody up there. It wasn't, but he's also been seen basically reading out what are instructions.
Sure.
Where it'll say repeat the
line.
Repeat the
I've seen that
line.
one.
Yeah. He does that kind of thing.
Here's the thing: you can film me. If you film me all the time, just like the president's filmed all the time, I'm gonna mess up a lot, and I'm gonna fall down and trip up, and I'll make mistakes on this podcast and say things incorrectly and use words incorrectly. But this is becoming a recurrence that is something that can't be overlooked.
There's one more clip, and this is but it's him trying to answer a simple question about school reopenings. And reason I wanted to play a little bit more is because we played a lot of him being able to focus and really present and stuff like that. And I have my good moments and I have my bad moments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've done it today. But at the same time, this is obviously somebody that's in cognitive decline. And for them to deny that is not talking about reality. And like I said, I don't wish ill on Joe Biden. I don't want to talk bad about him. I'm not. But what I'm talking about is the president of the United States that is showing signs of some limitations. This happened with Ronald Reagan at the end.
And Chace, it happens with all of us as a human being.
Right.
It happens with all of us.
Absolutely.
People out there that have older parents, grandparents, you've lived it, you've seen it. This is not knocking him, but there comes a time for everyone where your brain is just not as sharp, and there's no way to deny that.
Right, and I mean, there's some 90-year-olds out there
that are sharp as a whip.
that I would trust with my legal case.
Absolutely,
and there are
70-year-olds,
6-year-olds, 7-year-olds that I would say no way, no how.
Exactly.
But this is Joe Biden. This next video is him trying to answer some questions about going back to school.
I think it could be, but I hope in God that look, maybe I'm kidding myself, but as time goes on, the voter who is just trying to figure out, as I said, how to take care of their family, put 3 squares on the table, stay safe, be able to pay their mortgage or their rent, etc., is becoming much more informed on the motives of some of the political players and some of the political parties.
Okay, so if you take those two clips and you play them side by side with him talking about Afrikaners or him talking about political campaign finance reform, you see the obvious change in his ability to sort of focus and whatever. And so, like this with the 25th Amendment, this is in part what it's for. And I think in this country we need to start to have a serious conversation about doing something to prevent this kind of thing from happening, to put him in the position, because politically he's been put in the position because he's a good candidate, because he can still function at some high level from time to time to actually run and do well because of his name recognition. But we have other professions that actually have mandatory retirement ages.
Let me before we've kind of tiptoed on that topic, and we'll get to it. Let me say one thing before we go over that. For the Office fans out there, are you an Office fan? Yeah. There's a quote from Michael Scott who says something to the effect of, sometimes I start a sentence and I have no idea where it's going. And that is what we just witnessed right there. Yep. And it's not only scary to me for Americans and us here on the actual land of America. Right. To other countries, the president needs to look powerful and the best of the best. It reminds me of John F. Kennedy and the research I've done on him, where he had tons of health problems, but he hid them. His back was a problem. He would stand up straight because he wanted to look authoritative. Because to other countries, you need to look powerful. Sure. It's the same reason, I'll never be president because I'm 5'9", and that's a stretch. Tall men have more power, just look-wise. Sure. And this, to other countries, especially when you have countries like Russia who are trying to find any kind of thing that you can take advantage of. It just looks weak.
Sure.
And I'm not a hater of Biden, but I think that he has passed his prime by a long stretch, and it looks bad not only to our country but to other countries.
Sure. And for those of you that aren't really clear on sort of what the role of the president is and what kind of power he has, the area when it comes to dealing with like international politics, international relations is his.
It's huge.
That is his domain.
Yep.
You know, when it comes to controlling what actually happens in this country, he doesn't get involved until it's actually been signed by the House and the Senate. And so as far as influencing, he can, you know, try to what's called the bully pulpit, use his mouthpiece to support legislation, to have things changed domestically. But when it comes to international politics, he runs the show because of the necessity to be able to present a single opinion to a single to international
a unified single
right.
topic, idea,
right.
whatever.
Right, and you're going to be competing against other prime ministers. You're going to be competing with other sophisticated international actors, whether that be spies, foreign service agents, diplomats, and you have to be on top of your game for that kind of stuff.
I remember, and this was obviously when I was much younger, George W. Bush, when he was trying, when he was being elected or trying to get elected for the first time, a lot of the talk was, how is he going to do in foreign affairs? Because he's the guy you want to have a beer with.
Right.
And that resonates with a lot of Americans. But how is he going to do overseas? How is he going to do with these other, heads of state? And that's a huge part of what the president does and is. And that's scary to me when I see, that was an Australian broadcast or something, when they're laughing at our president.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah. That was not a projection of strength for sure. But I talked about it just briefly a second ago, but we were talking about like those jobs that require a retirement age.
Right.
Okay. Here in the United States, there's not a whole lot of them, but what's interesting to me is that almost all of them involve you making decisions that affect large amounts of people.
That is basically
the
bright line of law. Like
Right.
you have the law that you cannot judge somebody by their age,
Right.
but then when you have to judge a bunch of people, then we judge you by your age.
Right. So like air traffic controllers, 56.
Right.
Okay. And it just basically goes to the ability to cognitively process complicated math very, very quickly because they're in control of these aircrafts. They have to be at a certain distance from each other. The size of the aircraft matters.
Yep.
The number of people on board matters. How much fuel they have matters. Like all those things, the timing of them, the space in between. There's something called jet wash where even if you're right behind, if you pass through the jet wash, it will affect your ability to fly. They have to calculate all that stuff. I know this in part because my wife's father was an air traffic controller. Her brother is an air traffic controller, and nothing made me feel better. And when I went over to his house, I just showed up, just hanging out in Griffin. I just showed up to his house. He was on his computer playing an air traffic controller video game. And I'm
what
like,
he does for work.
What he does for work. He came home and he was practicing.
Right.
And I was like, it made me feel good because I do a objection, Your Honor video game. So what they do is they actually will put up a question, right, and an answer, and then you have to come up with I do the same thing. So
both of you are weird.
So yeah, both of us are weird. But judges also have
the 56 is not an old age. It's not an old age at all. And I guarantee you, there's men out there who are 65 and 70 and 75 who can do that job. But you have to put a limit on it because if you don't, then you're going to wind up with a situation where you have a person who's not able to do it.
Yep.
While he's in
while he's doing it. That's how he finds out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
you can't have that. Yeah.
Right.
And know that judges can render decisions that affect people's freedom.
Yep.
Sentencing and stuff like that. Being able to consider a lot of different factors when it comes to sentencing.
And like we talked to the new appellate court judge. What was it yesterday? And he's a young guy. He said he was, I think, 29 days on the bench, and he's the new Georgia Supreme Court judge. And it's you have to make these decisions when you're on the bench. This is what he was telling us. On the bench, you have to make them in 5-6 seconds. Now, as an appellate judge, you have days that you can research it.
Sure.
But on the bench, you have to know the case law, you have to know everything, and you have to know it now.
Yeah.
If I object, you better have the answer, Judge.
Yeah.
And you got 5 seconds to do it.
Or you're getting
and
reversed.
If you don't do it, you're going to get reversed.
You're going to get reversed. It's going to be years of litigation,
Yep.
tons of money spent because of it.
And
now,
not only mine and yours and the client's money, but taxpayers' money, because it's a trial that will have to be tried again.
Yep.
And that takes a lot of money. So those are the reasons that you have to put these limits.
Yeah.
And like I said, sometimes it's not fair because people that are older can still do it, but there has to be some kind of bright line test.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to make it clear the judges thing, that's in many states that have those laws. Like we have the Supreme Court, it's a lifetime appointment.
And you have also with judges, you have I forget my words, not to look like Biden, but the judges, the senior judges that can come in and kind of fill in.
Sure, yeah, that are retired.
But they don't do full caseload.
Yeah, and they're not going to be sitting on top of a capital murder case typically. You know,
Right.
So the person can get life, but they get pilots. Okay, at 65, got to retire. They have to be on for 8 hours at a time, ready to react to whatever the autopilot doesn't cover.
Right.
Be able to land. So they have to have the stamina, and they also have to have quick reactions and the ability to make split-second decisions.
Sure. Do you know when the law was that it required, I think it's 35 to become president? Is that right? 35?
36, I think
36.
it is, for whatever weird
And
reason.
I don't know when that became law. I apologize, but I know that it's right around there. But in my opinion, they didn't make a top tier of that because they died. Now people live. Live for a long time.
That's a good point.
And so they didn't make a bright line test of when your cognitive ability declined because you died.
Right, because the chances of a 92-year-old president was
zero. I mean, they were living to 50 years old.
Right.
But now that we're living longer and we know more about health, we have to have some kind of line to say, I love you, but you can't do this anymore. Your time has passed.
Yeah. I'm afraid to say it, but I feel like if the Republicans or the Democrats had a person that they could guarantee, no matter their cognitive ability or whatever, they could guarantee that they would win the presidency.
They absolutely would do it.
They would run
Both
them.
sides
They would run them every time. No matter how qualified.
And that's
or great
what I
they
mean.
are.
That we need a bright line test. Have to.
Yeah. The other one that I have listed here after the judges, air traffic controllers, is foreign service officers, and this is what's really important to me. Foreign service officers. These are the people that are working in our diplomats, our CIA agents. Working abroad because of the requirement of the information they have to retain, the importance of it, the sophistication that's required. Think on your feet, that type of thing. And so the idea that you would have one for like foreign service agents, but the person that is actually the centerpiece, the central person in control, doesn't have any limitations on their age. It's just it's a recipe for disaster. And in this country, we're coming to a place where everybody pretty much agrees that something's got to give one way or the other. And we need to make some changes. Of course, we already talked about it. Mandatory military service. That's just pretty much definitely going to occur for gun control and a variety of other reasons.
Chace has got his
also
theories, but
But also, I think that this might be a reasonable thing to put in place. It might not just be age. It just could be like you have to pass a cognitive test, some significant, difficult cognitive test. And like Bernie Sanders is pretty sharp still.
Sure.
He's an older guy, but I would disqualify him if we have to go with age. But he's still very, very sharp and can have a conversation.
Talking about this, I think it's more apparent now than ever with everybody having phones, cameras on their phones, excuse me, and video everywhere. And you could kind of, because if you're the president, there's a lot of people that are helping you make decisions. It's not a one-man show. Even in our business, we have to rely on support staff.
Sure.
I rely on you. What you tell me is gold. What I tell you is gold. We take it to the bank. We don't question it. We do it, whatever. So you could kind of get away with it, in years past. But now that you see it right in
all
your
the
face,
time,
you go, This has got to change. This has got to change.
Yeah.
And to me, it's more foreign policy than anything. It just if you're the head of state and you're the head of this country, and you give off the vibe that we're weak, then like we talked about on other podcasts, people are going to attack. People are going, and I'm not saying attack us. I'm just saying they're going to attack policies and procedures.
They're going to see us as vulnerable.
And if you see something as vulnerable, there's some bad people out there.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to take advantage of it.
Like we said, this is the Game of Thrones. Everybody's playing for keeps. The game is real, and rubbing is racing. And if they see a weakness in the United States, they're going to try their best to exploit it. It's true about Joe Biden's limitations, and it's true about where we keep documents and golf courses.
Absolutely.
So those are all sort of valid concerns. But we have some other little segments today.
Oh,
One
nice.
of we're going to try and do a you make the law call. So I'm just going to have D'Angelo play a little clip here, and let's react. This is right up your
I can't wait.
your alley.
I can't wait.
With premises liability.
Let me break this down for everyone. Number one, there has to be a known hazard, or a should have been known hazard.
Yep.
That hand railing there may or may not have been up to code. That's the first thing you check. Certain, like at my house, for example, we had to put railings on the front deck, front porch, I should say, because it was a X amount of inches off the ground. So, and then it is how was that connected? So that's number one. Does the homeowner know that this railing is not safe? Is it a hazard? Right? Hazard's number one. Can you figure out? Can you decipher? Is it a hazard? When you decipher if it's a hazard or not, you have to look at everyone. But this man is severely overweight.
Yep.
And he is struggling to get up the steps.
Sure.
Now, does he expect the handrail to hold him? Yes.
Yep.
Does the homeowner expect it to hold him? Yes, I would think. Many people have probably used it. And the part that is probably not looked at by the layman is the handrail that fell is on the flat surface.
Okay.
Now, if the handrail had fallen on the steps, I think you got a little bit more of a chance because that is helping you up. This is already on the flat surface. You kind of got to be on your own feet right there. So I don't think that there's a hazard here, number one. Secondly, what are the injuries? He fell over, and he fell over. It looked pretty soft. He's soft. He fell soft. I hate to say that. I mean, he's a large man, but he was struggling to get up the steps. He chose that job. You didn't choose who was delivering the Grubhub or Uber Eats or whatever. You didn't choose that driver. You didn't invite that situation. You don't have to have a ramp. You don't have to have all these things. You know, it's an unfortunate situation, but I don't think there's any recovery here because there's no notice. There's no hazard, number one, and there's no notice, number two. And I would be very surprised if there was severe damages that would not correlate with him being extremely overweight.
Yeah.
And you know, and as an attorney, sometimes you have to be blunt like that.
Yep.
But if you're morbidly obese and you fall down, sometimes it's because you're morbidly obese. It's not because there's a hazard.
Yeah. Well, if you could, D'Angelo, let's bring that video back up and let's just start from the beginning and don't necessarily play it. I just want to point some things out to Reid.
Sure.
Because these are some of the first things the things when I first started I missed too.
Like
Yeah,
I
if you
said,
just
I would
start-
investigate it. but-
Yeah, if you put the volume off and just sort of get a couple, just get them coming up the stairs, and let's take a look at this rail. There you go. All right, pause it right there. So let's take a look at this railing. Is there anything about this railing on the right side here that sort of stands out to you?
It is being held up by something, right?
Yep.
I don't know what it is, but it can kind of put the homeowner on knowledge, but I still think you lose this case.
Yeah, we have a missing rail.
That's fine.
Support rail here. We have boards coming off here. It looks as if there's something
Holding it up.
at the
I
base
agree.
holding it up.
I agree.
And so what I'm pointing out is that this would be a sign that an attorney would look at and be like, you should have known that this entire thing was in disrepair.
I 100% agree with that. But because it's on the flat land, it is no longer needed to support you. Up the stairs is and it's outside. Up the stairs is going to be more important. Now, you can say it's an attractive nuisance, but pure liability, on premise liability, I don't think this gets past summary judgment purely because you're on flat land and you no longer need support. Also, you have to look at the situation in totality, and this man is struggling. He's struggling to get up there.
Yeah.
And a homeowner who orders something, it's either, groceries delivered, Uber Eats, something like that. That's just not going to prevail with the jury. It may get past summary judgment because of the aspects you listed, but a jury is not going to award anything because the totality of the situation. It's not in disrepair. It is, you shouldn't have to use this. That's kind of aesthetically looking as a boundary. And legally, when you have a porch or deck that's off the ground a certain amount, then it's just to give you a area that you can't cross. Hey, this thing could fall off. Don't go past this.
Yeah.
It's not to support you.
Right.
Now, like I said, if he fell where he is now,
Different story.
it'd be a different story. In my opinion, legally, with all the problems, the homeowner is still going to win on this because of the other factors that are involved.
What about workers' comp?
Workers' comp, you maybe could have, depending on who he works for. If he's an independent contractor, probably not. If he's working for a company, then yes, that would still be workers' comp because he is on the job.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying you can't make a claim for something like this that happens. I'm just saying I don't think you'd be successful.
There you go. He nailed it.
Always
Nailed
do.
it. Yeah, he nailed
Always
it.
do, Chase.
All right.
Always do.
I always like to try and put little things that are on the border so that I can test your
I will say this, and this is
critique.
And once again, I'm going to be a little bit blunt and hope not hurt anybody's feelings. If that was a man in shape like you, and you walk up there and you just happen to lean on it, talking to the customer that, hey, I brought your food, and you're kind of leaning on it and it falls down, then you got a case.
Yeah.
But I just don't see it on.
Sure,
on
like practically, you don't see it. It shouldn't apply. It shouldn't apply differently between me and him. Right. But a jury is going to say, look, it's because you can't stand up properly and you can't go upstairs. That this is partially because this happened.
Right. And it is load bearing. Right. That's not a load bearing wall, and there's a load being brought on that wall.
Yeah. Well, we have reached the pinnacle or apex of our show today, and that is always Today in Politics with Reid Sanders.
We got to cut to Reid for the current events. All deeply in politics. And I scour the dark web for political events that I think are really hard-hitting.
Okay.
All right. And this one's... I really want you to see. I saw it, and I thought of you. I thought you'd enjoy it, and I want your reaction to it. Okay. Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Are you a racist? Do you hate Mexicans? The media calls us racist for wanting to build Trump's wall. They censor us, but it doesn't change the truth. Joe Biden's open border is killing Ohioans, with more illegal drugs and more Democrat voters pouring into this country. This issue is personal. I nearly lost my mother to the poison coming across our border. No child should grow up an orphan. I'm J.D. Vance, and I approve this message because whatever they call us, we will put America.
Now, before you respond, Chace, I want to just say two things. Okay, this man is leading by 3 points. Okay, and also I'm not great with geometry.
Mm-hmm.
That was a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Geography. That was a joke. Sorry. But Ohio is surrounded by Pennsylvania, Indiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Michigan.
Yeah.
The closest
Mexico's right there.
The closest one is Canada.
Yeah.
So what do you make of it?
This is an example of everything that is wrong with the country, in my opinion. This person is a person that's running for an office that is supposedly trying to lead us.
Chace,
and when
his family member almost died from somehow a Mexican going across the border into Ohio. And I'm trying to figure that out. But I'm just telling you.
It's from the drugs that they brought with them. Yeah. So what I found most disturbing about that, number one, is that he's supposed to be making good decisions, and then he chose to run that. Okay. And then also he equated half of Americans, apparently, to the same as illegal drugs that almost killed his mother. He says, illegal drugs and Democratic voters. You know, that's the problem.
Okay.
That's what's killing this country.
Almost killed my mother.
Almost killed my mother. Democrat. So it's like heroin is just as bad for you.
An orphan.
Yeah. Well, I'm not denying that at all. But in every single major genocide that's ever occurred, sorry to bring the tone down after that sadly hilarious video, the first thing that occurs is the political opposition is equated to some sort of animal or inanimate object, whether it's like Uganda and they called them cockroaches, or it was in Germany when they called the Jews rats. And then what you see is this rhetoric where they call the other people, you know, an animal, something less than human, and then it justifies being able to shoot and kill them and stuff like that. And he's like, vote for me because otherwise Mexicans and Democratic voters and heroin is going to come into the country. So, you know, you never fail to, bring that rain cloud right back over my head.
I'm bringing the political news. I didn't make the news, Chace.
You're right.
I'm just bringing the political ads, and I want to reinforce that this man is up 3 points in the polls.
Well, you keep it up. I'm gonna run. Coming up, I'm gonna compete against these folks. I can make better choices than that. My God. Oh, so
anyway,
wonderful.
Shake it off.
Okay. I think what we're gonna do now is we're gonna give you some tips. Okay. We're gonna start a new segment, and it's gonna be, is it keep your tail out of jail? All right. I'll have you do Georgia, and I'll do South Carolina. Right. So.
I'm Reid Sanders, and this is today's tip on how to keep your tail out of jail. In Marietta, Georgia, there is a code section that is vandalism and misuse of public property and parks, spitting in public buildings. I used to date a girl from Marietta, so I know this very well. In Marietta, you cannot spit out of a car or a bus. It is illegal. But there is an exception. For us rednecks who used to dip and drive trucks, you can spit out of your truck anytime you want.
I'm Chace Hawk with the Hawk Law Group, and I'm here with South Carolina's tip to keep your tail out of jail. Did you know that it is illegal to promise to marry a woman and then seduce her and back out? So if you make that promise and you spend the night, you better follow through. Otherwise, you can spend a year in jail. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's episode of Layman's Law School. Join us next time when we finally get into the topic of premises liabilities for the whole show, where Reid Sanders will do most of the talking. That's right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've been waiting for this my whole life.
Yeah, he might grow his beard back for this one.
I will, just for that, to look distinguished.
All right. Thank y'all for joining, and we'll see you next time.